So Maria and I have known each other. We actually first met when she interviewed me for the Philippines elections on Facebook Live. And she raises and continues to raise a lot of really important points about the challenges that we are all facing online. And it's important and one of the things we are trying to do at Facebook is making sure that we can continue partnerships and continue having dialogues so that we can continue to get better. And one of the things I want to talk to you about today before Maria and I have a little conversation and take some of your questions is talk about the ways we're working to protect election integrity on Facebook. We also, just before I forget, I want to put a plug. If you have not visited our activation back there at a break, please do so. Tom and Annika on my team would be happy to walk you through some of these things again, and there's even, if there's some swag left, we've got some of that too for you. Let's see if I can get, there we go. So there's 5 main things that we're looking at when we talk about protecting the integrity of elections on our platforms. When you think about, I 100% agree that Philippines was patient zero. That was the beginning, because a month later it was Brexit, and then Trump got the nomination, and then you had the U.S. election. And so there's a lot of related but separate problems when we're thinking about these issues. We need to look at what we can do to combat foreign interference. But it's also not just foreign interference, it's also looking at what could be potentially happening domestically in different countries, just like Maria was talking about in the Philippines. What can we do to crack down on fake accounts? Some of the most important work we can do is getting rid of fake accounts, because bad actors aren't exactly using their real names to do this activity. We are doing a lot more on transparency, particularly around making advertising more transparent, and I'll talk more about that. We're doing what we can to try to reduce the distribution of false news, and there's obviously a ton more work here to do, but I'll share with you some of our thinking on this. And then we also continue to want to do a lot of work of what we can do to support an informed electorate. What we can do to make sure people know basic things like when it's election day and having the right information about knowing where to go to vote. Let me start with how we think about the problem. When you think about foreign interference, we need to look across the different vectors of ways that people might try to exploit our platforms. And I should mention too, we're using the word Facebook here, but as many of you know, we have the family of apps. We have the Blue app, the Facebook one, we have Instagram, and we have WhatsApp. So know that when I say this about Facebook, we are actually working on this across the different platforms, because we know that they all need to be thinking about all of them in terms of protecting elections. So we want to make sure people have the right knowledge about the election, they feel safe about expressing themselves online, and they feel motivated to participate and turn out. Under the knowledge bucket, we need to look at misinformation. This could be misleading people about the candidates, the parties, election day, voting processes, anything like that. False amplification. What can we do to make sure that people can't coordinate to try to make something seem more popular online than it actually is? What about misrepresentation? One of the work that some of the folks here from Facebook that are on this team do a lot of is also looking at people who are trying to impersonate URLs. You know, buying NewYorkTimes.com, but you just flip 2 letters. And you're trying to use the power of that trust in that brand to try to push false news. On safety, what can we be doing to make sure people aren't bullied for sharing their political views? How can we make sure Facebook isn't being used to instigate offline violence? We did a lot of work for that in the Kenyan election in particular last year. What can we also be doing to help people keep their accounts secure? I'm sure everyone in this room is very familiar with 2-factor authentication, and I'm sure you all have very, very strong passwords on your accounts. Most politicians and their campaign staff don't. And so just the pure fact of trying to help them to make sure they got strong passwords and 2-factor authentication on is a huge step in the right direction. And then also what's work that we can do to make sure people aren't getting the wrong information about voting, but also aren't discouraged from voting by demotivating them or misleading them. So when we think about combating foreign interference, or even looking at how domestic actors might be trying to exploit the platforms, need to look across these different vectors. Now, when we try to confront the problem, there's sort of 4 things that we're looking at. And I'm sorry for the formatting of the slides. This is what happens when you try to use fancy fonts. We're trying to look at what we can do in terms of prevention. What can we do to stop the bad behavior? A good example here is, the first story that really came out of the US 2016 election were the Macedonians who were sharing a bunch of false news because they just wanted to make money. They didn't really care who won. They just found that it was links talking about right-leaning content tended to get more clicks. So one of the things we've done at Facebook is try to detect when a URL is going to a page that's mostly ads and automatically reduce the reach of that content. So we are trying to remove the economic incentive from them to help even just stop them from wanting to spend their time trying to put their content on our platform. We need to monitor, though. We are working hard to make sure that what happened in 2016 doesn't happen on the platforms again, but we also have to stay one step ahead. The bad guys and the folks who are trying to exploit these platforms are going to keep trying to get smarter and smarter. And so we do a lot of work in terms of monitoring to try to detect, for instance, foreign content that might be getting a lot of reach in a country. Now, not all foreign activity in an election is bad. It could be the BBC writing an article about something happening in America. And so what that does is it flags it for our teams in order for them to be able to then investigate those types of issues. This is something that the company did in Alabama. By doing this, we were able to surface some more of those URLs from Macedonians that were trying to share fake news, and we were able to block them. We've got to get quicker on enforcement. By doing this type of monitoring and looking for this type of activity on our platforms, we are encountering issues and potential policy issues and consequences that we haven't necessarily had to think through before. So we need to get quicker on how can we enforce on these things and make sure we're making the right decisions so that we aren't taking down legitimate speech. And then we have to constantly be doing research. We, ahead of every election, we try to start about a year and a half, 2 years out from an election to do research in that country to understand the risks that they face and how they think about and how they engage civically and how they engage in elections. So then that way our product teams and others can be thinking about what is it that we need to be building and what it is we need to be monitoring for their particular country. In terms of fake accounts, we have committed, when we look at fake accounts, there's a human aspect to trying to find these and take them down, and we've committed to increasing our teams on this from 10,000 to 20,000 over this year. But then there's a lot of work that we do on the automated side. We are constantly running scripts and systems in the background to try to find, particularly automated ones are easier, and we take down millions of those at the point of creation. What's harder is determining a count where it's just rooms of people, not just like yourselves, but rooms of people, creating profiles, not using their real name, to try to push out content. And this is where we try to use more machine learning. My dad, I got him on Facebook finally last June, and it only took me working there for 6 years before he finally agreed to join the platform. But when he first joined, he only liked my mom, my brother, my sister, and I. He didn't really post a lot right away. Now he does these really funny dad selfies. But that's a typical beginner user. Whereas if somebody that's creating an account just to push out content might be friending hundreds of people right away and doing 20, 30, 40 posts right away in their feed. That could be an indication to us that maybe that account isn't real. We're also doing a lot of work on ad transparency. So in the United States, we launched at the end of May that now if you want to run a political or issue ad, you have to get authorized, which means you need to submit to us your ID so that you can prove to us that you are who you say you are. And we actually send you a letter to your house with a code to also make sure that you're located in the United States. And now if you see an ad from a candidate, political party, or anybody else in your news feed, it says paid for by, and it has the disclaimer. Here, I'll show you what it looks like in feed. So when you're seeing it, you'll see that we encourage you to click on it to get additional information. A unit pops up on the bottom of that with a longer disclaimer, and you can go see this ad in the archive. These ads are going into a 7-year archive, and you can actually see that archive in that activation. that we have back there where you can see the range of impressions that ad got, how much was spent, and the age, gender, and location to state level of who saw that ad. You can see all the other ads that that page is running, but you can also search by candidate, political party, issue, group, whatever search term you want, to see the ads that people are running about that. Next week, we are going to be rolling out our View All Ads feature. This is where globally, you're going to be able to go to any page on Facebook and see the ads that it's currently running. This is another step for us, for people to be able to see and provide more transparency into the advertising that pages are doing, regardless of if you're being targeted or not. Finally, on the work that we're trying to do around false news, there's three main things that we're looking at here. First, removing that content and actors that violate our policies, whether because they're fake accounts or the content or what they're saying violates our community standards. We want to reduce the spread of problematic content. Clickbait's the best example here. If you were putting up a post on Facebook, sharing a link, and the headline is something like, "Woman jumps in pool, you won't believe what happens next." We are trying to do more to be able to detect those types of headlines and immediately reduce the distribution of them. And then we're also working with fact checkers like Maria and many others to help us to identify potential hoaxes. We use a variety of signals. We look at user reports. We look if people are in the comment section saying this is fake, this is false. And then the fact checkers review and rate that accuracy. And then if they determine that it's false, we take action. And now if you happen to, so we reduce the distribution, but let's say you go to a friend's profile and there's still that link there, you're going to see the articles from the fact checkers and it's going to be labeled as fact check. In addition, we send a notification to anybody who shared that URL after it was deemed to be fake. And then if somebody still tries to share it, we warn them one more time that maybe you don't want to because it's false. Now, we're continually trying to get better and better at this. We just recently announced this week that now, too, if a fact checker marks a story as false, we are now going to proactively go out and look for other stories about that topic to try to more quickly reduce the distribution of those. So we're trying to use a combination of all of these things to try to do better at reducing the reach of all of this. So I know I'm going a little bit long, so just two more really quick things. We're covering about 40, 50 elections over, particularly looking over the next 2 years. And we're getting better with each election. We have Turkey tomorrow. Turkey has an election tomorrow. Mexico has their election on Sunday, or in a week on July 1st. With each election, we are getting better and better with the systems that we're trying to deploy. And then finally, there's still a lot of work we're doing on civic engagement. Facebook can still be a place where people can, some of you may have heard about the fundraiser that happened in the US where $18 million was raised, about the situation that was happening at the border. What we try to do with our civic engagement products is making sure people have the right information about the election. In the US, in 2016, we estimate we helped 2 million people register to vote. And then we also saw that there was a 6% increase in ballot knowledge by us showing people all of the different candidates that were on their ballot. So with that, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you giving us the time.